The power of a story is so evident in children. When you get to the part that deals with princes and princesses, they physically stop moving. The idea of castles and royalty is foreign and interesting, and it catches them every time. We have done a good job storytelling these things. When you ask a child, what is a kingdom, be prepared because they know the answer. They can describe a kingdom in full detail. A kingdom has a king and a castle. It has a crown and horses. They tell you these things not because they have been to a kingdom, but because they have heard the stories, because they have entered into this world through their imagination. We have done a far lesser job at storytelling the kingdom of God. Our children and our adults answer less confidently when asked, what is the kingdom of God? The images of the kingdom of God are not as easily recalled as a crown, and I don't think that we are alone in that. Those who heard the parables during the very first story time didn't get it entirely. The kingdom of God is upside down and topsy-turvy. The kingdom is equated to a treasure hidden in a field, a net full of good and bad fish, yeast and dough. The stories of the kingdom are simple, but they are so complex. The kingdom belongs to children, but it is for all of us. The kingdom is a future reality, and yet it is here and now. The images of the kingdom of God may be less impressive than those found in a fairy tale book, but they too require a bit of imagination, and they require us to enter into another world. There is something about a good story delivered well. A story can teach us, influence us, stick with us. Jesus, a great teacher who could have chosen any way to communicate his message, did so through stories, in parables. Mark tells us that this was not an isolated event. With many such parables, he spoke the word to them as they were able to hear it. He did not speak to them except through parables. This scene is one that we find repetitively in all the Gospels. Jesus in the midst of a crowd telling stories. Throughout his ministry, he did many great and noteworthy things, miracles, healings, etc. But the majority of his ministry was in teaching. And while some of that occurred through a great sermon, much of it occurred through stories. As the crowd gathers around, Jesus moves just off the bank and sits in a boat just on the water. The crowd, by all accounts large at this point, settles in on the sloping hillside, eager to hear what this teacher has to offer. And he begins to speak. And as he teaches, he speaks in many parables. Listen, he says, and the crowd begins to quiet in order to hear. A sower went out to sow. An image so familiar to those who are gathered there, the farmers who sow it, the fishermen who see the farmers toil day after day. And the sower, he takes his seed and he begins to sow. And he does so in anything but that does not make sense. He takes the seed, and he begins to spread it on everything, and in excessive amounts. And some seed falls on the path. And that seed is soon pecked up by the birds who have seen it so carelessly flung. Other seed, as you can imagine, it fell on the rocky ground where it did not have much soil. It springs up quickly, and when the sun comes out, it is scorched because it had no depth. The seed which fell among the thorns, which some of that seed did, grew up, and the thorns choked it, and so it yielded no grain. But still, other seed fell into the good soil, and that seed brought forth much grain, growing up and increasing and yielding 30, 60, 100-fold. And as Jesus dismisses the crowd, he says, "Let those who have ears hear." as the crowd disperses, slightly quieter than when they arrived, reflecting on what has been said, speaking in hushed tones to their neighbors, asking, "Now, what do you think he was talking about anyway?" The disciples, that group of 12, moves closer to Jesus, and when they are alone, they ask him about the stories. They ask about their meaning, his use in telling them. They, after all, have spent their days and their nights with Jesus, and so surely they are privy to their meanings. And they are right. To you has been given the secrets of the kingdom. But for those outside, everything is in parables. And he goes on to explain the parable, the stories and the images used to express the secrets of the kingdom of God, equating those seeds so haphazardly flung on the road, on the rocks, as those who hear, and yet the word does not take root. But those who are sown on the good soil, they hear the word, accept it, and they bear much fruit. And so we leave the scene, and Jesus, the great storyteller, continues on with story time. There is a popular television show running right now entitled Once Upon a Time. And without any further explanation or knowledge of the show, you can probably infer what the show is about. The producers of that show were fully aware of the power of those 4 words. The phrase, once upon a time. It invokes images, expectations, a reaction from the audience, the understanding that the story is beginning and that something wonderful is about to occur. Jesus also tended to have an equally powerful and similar phrase. The kingdom is like. These 4 words were also signify that something is about to happen. Some mystery is about to be revealed, and some picture is going to be painted. Those words may have invoked some expectations from the crowds around Jesus. They may have had a mental picture of what a kingdom was like. And when those 4 words were followed by things like someone scattering seed, treasure hidden in a field, a mustard seed, confusion and frustration were understandable. These are not kingly images. These are everyday, common farm images. What sort of kingdom is that? What do you mean the kingdom is like a seed? The kingdom of God, to one of those who would have been listening to Jesus, would not have been a new concept. They were actually looking forward to it. It was a future reality that they were anticipating. It would be a time of glory. But Jesus was saying that the kingdom was not only mundane, but it was here, and that it was now, and that it was for all people, it was simple, and it lacked in extravagance. What he was describing was as ordinary as the fields in which they tilled every day. You see, the parables which Jesus told required imagination. They asked the listener to enter into another world. Asked the listener to walk away asking, what if? What if the kingdom is actually here? What if the kingdom is like a mustard seed? The telling and retelling of parables have left an imprint on us. Look how they have informed our language. We speak of a kind or a helpful neighbor as a good Samaritan. We speak of a confused or lost teenager as a prodigal son. When we let the parables inform more than just our language, our life speaks the phrase, the kingdom is like. And we live the ordinary and the mundane moments with faith and hope. We become the Good Samaritan. We welcome the prodigal sons. When we find joy and life in the spreading of seed, in the sharing of faith, and the caring for our neighbors, we speak tales of the kingdom of God. We, as people of the kingdom, are storytellers. Our lives, our words, our deeds, These are stories. These are the parables of the kingdom of God. We are the farmers. We are the fishermen. We live in the ordinary. We experience the mundane. Our life is a story. Have you ever heard someone tell a joke and they get the punchline wrong? Or a story and they get distracted and bogged down in the details? Without the proper delivery, the story falls flat. You see, the delivery matters. Your delivery matters. Great storytellers are clear, succinct, and engaging. The delivery matters. Your delivery matters. When we speak of the kingdom of God, yet we chase after castles and crowns, how compelling is our story? When we tell a tale of compassion and sacrifice, but do so in a half-hearted manner, how engaging is our tale? The delivery matters. Parables require a bit of imagination and a bit of reflection. It requires the storyteller to imagine another reality. It invites the hearer to join. The story you are telling with your life, is it causing others to imagine another reality? A kingdom where no one goes hungry, where all are welcomed? Is the kingdom you are telling about through the actions of your life the kingdom of God or the kingdom of the world? Is your story marked by ambition and selfishness or desire to show compassion and grace? On the hillside, we sit with the disciples who move to approach Jesus after the crowd has gone. We have heard this story before, and to us has been given the secrets of the kingdom. We know the images, we know the plot, and we know the ending. We are on the inside. We are the storytellers, and to us it should be obvious. But to the outsider, our life can prove quite confusing because to the outsider, we are speaking in parables. Our selfless care for our neighbor, our commitment to contentment, it will look foolish to those who know not the story of the kingdom. To those farmers and those fishermen, this sower who sows without care as to where the seed are falling seems quite foolish, actually. Perhaps rather reckless. But to the disciple, this is the way of the kingdom. The story we tell, the seed we sow, it should be lavish. Telling the story to all who listen, knowing that our tale will find the good soil and will grow and bear much fruit. The kingdom of God is like the widow who spends her well-earned retirement in the villages of Haiti among the forgotten. The kingdom of God is like the lawyer who hears the call to ministry and at 45 enrolls in seminary. The kingdom of God is like the community who gather their resources and move into the rundown neighborhood in order to share in life with the least. The kingdom of God is like the young man or women who run not away from the war zone, but into it in order to be Christ to those in foxholes. The kingdom of God is like you and like me when we put our agendas on hold to care for someone in need. What kingdom is your life telling about? Won't you tell the kingdom of God?